On a late March afternoon in 1975, Maryland was bathed in the first light of spring. The trees along the road to Wheaton Plaza had just begun to sprout buds. Families strolled leisurely, and children eagerly enjoyed their short spring break. In this peaceful scene, the Lyon sisters Sheila, 12, and Catherine, 10, also stepped out of their small home in Kensington, full of excitement. They only planned to walk a short distance to buy a few items and return home before dinner. No one in the family could have imagined that would be the last time they saw the two girls. The disappearance of Catherine and Sheila quickly became one of the most shocking cases in America, lasting decades and haunting not only the Lyon family, but the entire Washington, D.C. community. That case was not just a personal tragedy. It also reflected the deep insecurity of a society facing the darker side of modernization, when shopping malls sprang up, when children were given more freedom, and when danger could lurk in seemingly safe everyday life. Chapter 1, March 25, 1975, The Fateful Outing. That morning, the Lyon household was as calm as usual. John and Mary Lyon, parents of 4 children, were busy with work, while the kids made their own plans. Sheila, the 12-year-old with shining blonde hair, was mature and often took care of her younger sister. Catherine, 10, was more mischievous and loved to try new games. In the early afternoon, the two sisters asked their mother for permission to walk to Wheaton Plaza, just half a mile from their home. This was a familiar hangout spot for many teens and families, with a movie theater, the famous Orange Bowl pizza shop, and various souvenir stalls. Mary Lyon hesitated at first, but eventually agreed, with one condition: the sisters had to be home before 4 p.m. for dinner. With a few coins in their pockets and cheerful spirits, Sheila and Catherine headed down the busy street. No one knew that each small step was leading them into a darkness that would last for more than 4 decades. The last witnesses. At Wheaton Plaza, some people recalled seeing the girls stop by Orange Bowl Pizza. Others said they saw them talking to a strange man holding a tape recorder, later dubbed by the press as the tape recorder man. He asked children about music and even seemed to be recording their voices. One witness claimed to see the girls near a suspicious car parked at the curb. But in the bustle of a busy mall, no one remembered the license plate or exact details. When the clock passed 4 p.m., the Lyon kitchen grew tense with worry. By 7 p.m., as night fell, John and Mary Lyon reported their daughters missing to the police. The panic begins. That same night, Montgomery County Police launched a large-scale search. Dozens of investigators spread out in all directions, combing every corner of Wheaton Plaza. Local newspapers quickly ran the story, throwing the community into fear. The 2 little Lyon girls from a law-abiding, well-liked family had vanished without a trace, as if into thin air. That night, in the small Kensington home, the parents stayed awake. Dinner grew cold. 2 chairs sat empty at the table. And a nightmare with no end had begun for the Lyon family. Chapter 2, A Community's Nightmare. Right after the Lyon family reported the incident, the Montgomery County Police launched an unprecedented large-scale campaign. News of the sisters' disappearance quickly spread across the suburbs of Washington, a place once considered safe and peaceful. In the 1970s, America was undergoing intense social change. After the Vietnam War, trust in the government was low, urban crime was rising, and fears about personal safety were common. Yet suburbs like Kensington and Wheaton still carried the image of safe havens where children could freely ride bikes, walk to school, or visit shopping centers without strict supervision. The disappearance of Sheila and Catherine shattered that sense of safety. A media storm, public panic. Within hours, the story appeared on the front pages of local newspapers. Photos of the two smiling blonde girls were printed under the word missing. Reporters described the event as a nightmare in broad daylight, stirring anxiety among parents throughout Maryland. Police received hundreds of calls. Some claimed to have seen the girls at a subway station. Others insisted they were forced into a green van. The information poured in so fast that within 24 hours, detectives had to sort through more than 1,000 separate tips. The massive search. Police deployed search dogs, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers to comb through parks, parking lots, and forests near Wheaton Plaza. It became one of the largest search efforts in Maryland's history at the time. Rescue teams went door to door, questioned every store owner. But the only results were scattered, conflicting statements that led nowhere. Social life turned upside down. Families in the area immediately tightened rules. Children were no longer allowed to go outside alone. Schools handed out leaflets warning about stranger danger. A once trusting community was suddenly blanketed by suspicion. Any man wandering near a playground was eyed with alarm. A Washington Post journalist wrote at the time, "The disappearance of the Lyon sisters is like a shattered mirror, reflecting the deepest fears of suburban life, that the world is no longer safe for children." Chapter 3: The Shadow of a Stranger, the Tape Recorder Man. Among hundreds of statements, one detail stood out and was repeated by many witnesses: the image of the sisters talking to a man carrying a tape recorder. The Tape Recorder Man. Witnesses described him as a middle-aged man in his 50s, thin, with gray hair, holding a microphone connected to a recorder. He approached children in the mall, asking to record their voices for a music survey. Several people recalled seeing Sheila and Catherine speaking with him. But no one knew his real name, address, or whereabouts. The press gave him a nickname, the Tape Recorder Man. Police tried hard to track him down, but the descriptions were vague. When the case stalled, this suspect became a ghostly figure, haunting the public imagination for decades. Other suspects. Apart from the Tape Recorder Man, police also received tips about a suspicious van. One person swore they saw the girls talking with a man near the vehicle. But no one remembered the plate number, make, or color clearly. Over the years, dozens of suspects were questioned: sex offenders, drifters, mall workers. But none were charged, and all the evidence crumbled into dust. A case frozen in time. Within months, the investigation slowed. Despite a large reward for information, no reliable leads surfaced. The case was officially labeled a cold case, filed away in the Montgomery County Archives. For the Lyon family, each day was torture. John and Mary Lyon moved from hope that their daughters would be found safe to the slow despair of endless waiting. Chapter 4: Decades Without Answers. For 4 decades, the disappearance of the Lyon sisters remained an open wound in Maryland. The Lyons in darkness. John Lyon, the father, was a well-known local radio announcer. His once comforting voice was now shadowed by grief. The family stayed in their Kensington home, clinging to the faint hope that Catherine and Sheila might one day return. At memorial services, Mary Lyon would often say through tears, "We just want the truth. No matter how painful, the truth is better than this endless darkness." A community haunted. For locals, the case became a cautionary tale. Generations of parents reminded their children, "Don't go alone. Remember the Lyon sisters." It became part of the community's collective memory. Newspapers and TV shows revisited the case periodically. Journalists called it Maryland's greatest unsolved mystery. Documentary makers portrayed the family's decades of sorrow. The terrifying silence. Despite periodic reviews by detectives, no breakthrough came. There was almost no physical evidence, witnesses were unreliable, and suspects vanished with time. The silence itself deepened the mystery. It felt like a novel abandoned halfway through, leaving readers the Maryland community without an ending. Chapter 5. Light After 40 Years. For decades past, and the disappearance of the Lyon sisters seemed buried in the past. But in 2013, a special unit of Montgomery County Police and the FBI decided to reopen the file. This was the era when American law enforcement began paying more attention to cold cases, crimes left unsolved for lack of evidence. Revisiting the old files, investigators flipped through faded notes and reports. Among the many names questioned in 1975, one appeared again and again: Lloyd Lee Welch Jr. At just 18, Welch had claimed to see the sisters at Wheaton Plaza. Back then, police dismissed him as unreliable, calling him a fantasist seeking attention. But modern investigators noticed something different. Parts of Welch's story oddly matched other independent evidence. More importantly, Welch later built a criminal record filled with child sexual assault convictions, putting him squarely in the spotlight. A suspicious profile. Welch grew up in a troubled family and moved often. He worked for traveling carnivals, and records placed him near Wheaton in 1975. Court files showed a disturbing pattern of targeting children in public places. Detective Dave Davis, who reopened the case, recalled, "Every piece seemed to point one way. Welch was not just a witness. He could very well have been the perpetrator." New interrogations. In 2014, Welch was brought in for questioning multiple times. At first, he denied everything, insisting he was only a bystander. But under pressure, his story shifted. He sometimes claimed he only saw the girls being taken. Other times, he admitted helping move two injured girls. The contradictions revealed one clear fact: Welch knew far more than he let on. That was enough for police to dig deeper, searching for physical evidence to tie him directly to the crime. Chapter 6. Taylor's Mountain, the place that hid the crime. One of the most chilling details Welch provided was a location, Taylor's Mountain in Bedford County, Virginia, where his family once had a cabin. Excavating the site. From 2014 to 2015, FBI teams and Virginia police conducted extensive digs on Taylor's Mountain. Hundreds of personnel were deployed, using excavators, ground-penetrating radar, and cadaver dogs. The quiet forest turned into an excavation site. After weeks of searching, they unearthed bone fragments, a tooth, and traces of burned rope. Nearby lay a charred child's bead necklace, strikingly similar to one Catherine was known to have worn. Though the remains were too degraded for DNA testing, the context strongly supported the theory that the Lyon sisters were killed and destroyed there. Evidence in the old house. At a house once owned by the Welch family in Hyattsville, Maryland, investigators also discovered traces of blood in the basement. Though too old for full analysis, the evidence suggested violent acts had occurred there. Combined with Welch's inconsistent stories, the findings sealed him as the prime suspect. A horrifying picture. Investigators concluded Welch had not acted alone. In some accounts, he mentioned his father and uncle. Welch claimed his sisters were held and assaulted in a basement, then transported to Taylor's Mountain for disposal. Though details could never be completely verified, the overall picture was damning enough for prosecutors. Welch had played a central role. Chapter 7. The historic trial and the 48-year sentence. After more than 40 years, in July 2015, a Virginia grand jury indicted Lloyd Lee Welch Jr. on 2 counts of first-degree murder. It was a historic turning point. Few believed the frozen case would ever reach a courtroom. A plea deal. The trial was complex. Welch initially pleaded not guilty, but prosecutors presented layers of circumstantial evidence statements, witness accounts, site findings. Facing the possibility of the death penalty, Welch accepted a plea deal in September 2017. He admitted involvement in the deaths of Sheila and Catherine Lyon. In return, he avoided execution and received a 48-year prison sentence. Inside the courtroom, the day of sentencing, the courtroom was packed. John and Mary Lyon sat in the front row, holding hands quietly. When the judge read the sentence, Mary wept. John nodded slightly, as if acknowledging that last, some truth had been spoken. The prosecutor stated, "This sentence cannot bring the girls back, but it closes a chapter and delivers delayed justice for the Lyon family." Unfinished questions. Even with Welch behind bars, haunting questions remained. Where exactly were the girls' bodies? Did Welch's father and uncle truly participate, as he claimed? Why were decisive clues hidden for so many years? The public felt justice had only partly been served. For the Lyon family, however, the verdict at least confirmed what they had long feared. Sheila and Catherine were not lost by chance. They were victims of a brutal crime. Chapter 8. Nearly 50 years later, darkness still remains. Today, when people mention the Lyon sisters' case, Maryland residents still shudder. Although Lloyd Lee Welch Jr. has been convicted, the shadows of the case remain because so many questions are unanswered. The bodies were never found. The excavations on Taylor's Mountain revealed bone fragments, a tooth, and a bead necklace. But science never fully proved they belonged to Catherine and Sheila. Without bodies, the Lyon family could never hold a complete funeral. For the parents, it meant decades of anguish. Their daughters remained officially missing instead of laid to rest. Mary Lyon once said in an interview, "People say time heals. But for us, time only deepens the emptiness. We need to know where our girls are so we can put flowers on their graves." Possible accomplices in the shadows. Welch repeatedly mentioned his father and uncle as accomplices. Evidence suggested they were present at Taylor's Mountain during that time. Yet lacking direct proof, prosecutors could not bring charges. This left the public unsettled. Many believed justice was incomplete. One man was imprisoned, but others who may have participated in the crime never stood trial. Renewed search in 2024. In October 2024, nearly half a century later, police and the FBI returned to Taylor's Mountain. News outlets reported new evidence had prompted the search. The aging forest was torn open once more, dozens of investigators combing every inch of soil. But the outcome brought no breakthrough. The public realized the truth might forever be buried with the Virginia woods. A legacy of fear and change. Yet the Lyon sisters' case left a powerful legacy. It pushed law enforcement to value reopening cold cases. Other crimes across the U.S. were later solved through the same approach. The case also raised awareness about child safety, inspiring school programs on stranger danger, and family rules about supervision. Above all, it became a story of human endurance, of loss, of a family's pain, and of the determination to pursue justice even if it takes half a century. Conclusion: the legacy of a case. Nearly 50 years have passed since March 25, 1975, when Catherine and Sheila Lyon walked out to Wheaton Plaza. Those small steps became part of history, not through innocence, but through tragedy that haunted America. The Lyon sisters' case was more than a criminal file. It was a mirror reflecting post-war American society. It was the grief of an ordinary suburban family. It was proof of the cruelty humans can inflict on the innocent. Today, Lloyd Lee Welch Jr. serves his 48-year sentence in a Virginia prison. But the sentence cannot erase the unanswered questions. Where exactly are the sisters' remains? Were there other guilty hands never charged? And what really happened in the final hours of Catherine and Sheila's lives? The story continues to live in collective memory. It reminds us that justice may be delayed, but it must never be abandoned. And somewhere, in the hearts of Marylanders, the image of the two smiling girls remains alive, a symbol of hope that never fades.